My name is Sophia Tasker. I've been married for several years now to my husband Sebastian, whom I met through work. Sebastian works in sales at a major corporation. Perhaps because he's on the fast track to promotion, he's been leading a very busy life. Work is so hectic, I can barely manage things at home. I want you to quit your job and support me as a stay-at-home wife. Strongly urged by Sebastian, I left my job in what's known as a marriage retirement. When we were dating, Sebastian was considerate and diligent. However, after getting married, he changed dramatically. "I'm home. Make dinner now. I'm starving." "Welcome home, but please wait a bit. I'm going to bathe Harper first." "What? I'm tired from work and I come home to this. Why do I have to prioritize a kid?" "Don't call her kid. Harper can hear you." "So what if she hears? She's only 3, she won't understand. She knows her father is mocking her." "You're annoying, just shut up and make my dinner quickly." Sebastian visibly became more irritable and threw a magazine at me that was nearby. "Ouch. Don't throw things. It's dangerous." "Then just do as I say quickly without talking back. You're useless. Why do you think I married a plain woman like you? I picked someone who seemed like they'd work hard as a housekeeper." "All right, I'll make dinner. Just wait a bit longer." "That's right, as long as you understand. Hurry up." I didn't want my daughter to hear any more of my husband's verbal abuse. I decided to just obey my husband quietly. Our married life was becoming like a relationship between a slave and a master. I couldn't defy what Sebastian said, and he always did whatever he wanted. Amidst this, I became pregnant with our second child. I thought maybe, just maybe, this pregnancy might make Sebastian realize his responsibilities as a father. However, those hopes were dashed. "Another kid, huh? Ugh, so annoying. Just so you know, I'm not doing any parenting. It's none of my business, so you better handle babysitting 2 kids on your own. You're an incompetent housewife, after all, so you should at least do that much." "Incompetent? I quit my job because you asked me to." "What's with that look? Got something to say?" "I quit my job to support you because you said you needed it." "What? The kind of work you women do isn't anything serious. You couldn't earn like I do anyway. It's only natural for you to do as I say since I'm the one supporting you financially. A housekeeper should just quietly keep her master happy at home." I wanted to talk back given his harsh words. But I knew from experience that doing so would only make things worse. In the midst of these days, I noticed a change in my husband. "Hey, what's this earring? I found it in your suit pocket." "What? Oh. I don't know. It must have gotten mixed up in there by someone else." "Things don't just hop into pockets on their own. Are you cheating?" "What? What are you talking about? Really, stay-at-home wives. I'm too busy with work to have time for that." "But, there was lipstick on your shirt before. Don't pretend it didn't happen." Stop being so hysterical. It's unseemly to shriek like that. "What? I'm just asking because it's strange." "Yeah, that's right. Actually, unlike you, I'm dating a young girl who's all fresh and vibrant." "Figures. I knew it. Why?" "It doesn't matter. I'm exhausted from work, so a little affair doesn't concern you." "How can you say it doesn't concern me? What are you thinking, doing this behind your wife's back?" "Stop acting so high and mighty, you parasitic housewife. Without my earnings, you'd be lost on the streets in no time." My husband was completely unapologetic about his actions. "I could divorce you right now if I wanted to. And I won't acknowledge that child you're carrying." "How could you?" When he brought up the child, I couldn't muster the strength to continue being assertive. Perhaps I have no choice but to endure this tyrannical husband. Despite my pleas, my husband's attitude remained unchanged as my due date approached. Ouch, this could be it. It's probably labor. I need to call Sebastian. Hello, Sebastian, it's earlier than expected, but I think I'm in labor. So what? Take me to the hospital, it's going to happen soon. I'm about to go on a trip with my lover. You handle it yourself. What do you mean, a trip? A trip is a trip. I'm moving now, so don't call me anymore. Hey, Sebastian. Let's go, shall we? Aren't you done with the phone yet? Sorry, my wife is being annoying. Just leave your wife alone. You're with me right now, right? All right. By then. I'm hanging up. Wait, Sebastian. Listen to me. Like I'd care whose kid it is. The call was mercilessly disconnected. With no other choice, I had to call a taxi myself. I waited for the taxi to arrive with my daughter Harper. Mom, are you okay? Does your stomach hurt? Seeing me in a different state, Harper looked worried and teary-eyed. It's okay, Harper. I'm sorry for worrying you. It hurts, my stomach. Despite my reassurances, I couldn't bear the pain and crouched down involuntarily. Excuse me, are you all right? A man approached and spoke to me. I'm sorry. I'm in labor and waiting for a taxi. That sounds tough. Do you have someone to accompany you? My husband is out, and I have to go to the hospital by myself. Are you taking your daughter with you? If you'd like, I can accompany you to the maternity hospital. I couldn't possibly impose. Just then, another sharp pain shot through my abdomen. The intervals between the labor pains were getting shorter. Though bearable, it seemed extremely challenging to go to the maternity hospital with Harper in tow. Excuse me, could you please accompany me just until we get to the maternity hospital? Of course, I can't just leave a woman in distress. There's the taxi. Shall we go? Mr. McLaughlin swiftly picked up my luggage and urged Harper and me into the car. Despite being a stranger, he was so kind, which made me feel even sadder when I thought about Sebastian. Afterwards, I safely arrived at the maternity hospital and was immediately taken to the examination room. My parents arrived in time to take care of Harper. Thank you for accompanying me, it hurts. Amidst intermittent labor pains, I managed to thank Mr. McLaughlin with a bow. Don't push yourself. Don't worry about me. Good luck. I'll leave you here, Mr. McLaughlin said and then left. He truly helped me a lot. I decided to thank him properly once things settled down. And a few hours later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Still, there had been no word from Sebastian. I felt a mix of joy for the safe arrival of my child and loneliness from the betrayal by my husband as I went through childbirth. Hello, where are you? A girl was born. Come home quickly. I tried calling Sebastian to tell him about the birth, but only the ringing tone echoed, and it never connected. Reluctantly, I left a message on the voicemail. Mommy, the baby is cute, isn't she? My mother brought Harper to visit me in the hospital room. Harper, seeing her newborn sister, was delighted and kept saying how cute she was. She's your sister. Make sure to love her a lot. Yeah. I'm a big sister now. I'll do my best. Harper smiled and gently stroked the baby's cheek. Even a 3-year-old was happy about the new life. And yet, where was Sebastian and what was he doing? Suddenly, my cell phone rang loudly. Hey, Sophia. Come help me right now. It's a mess here, hurry up. What do you mean? I don't understand. It's just that I messed up driving and crashed into the guardrail. You had an accident? What about the other party? No, just property damage. But it's a mess. The car is wrecked, and both Arya and I are seriously injured. Arya must be his mistress. We're currently at the hospital getting treated. Looks like it will take weeks to fully recover. I can't even eat by myself. Hurry up and come help. Do you even realize my situation? You expect someone who just gave birth to come help you? That's an exaggeration. It's your second birth, you should be used to it by now. Fine, just come after you're discharged. Sebastian, as always, said whatever he wanted. The way he ignored me during labor and now his selfish demands, I felt a great surge of anger within me. I couldn't bear to listen anymore and threw my smartphone on the table in frustration. Mom, are you still on the phone? Hello, who is it? Harper, is that you? Hey, tell your mom to come here. Who is this? Mom, some man I don't know is saying something. Hey, what do you mean some man? I'm your father. A father? I don't have a father. Sebastian rarely came home and, of course, hardly ever played with Harper. It's no wonder Harper didn't recognize her father's voice. Harper, give me the phone. Don't rely on family only when you're in trouble, especially when you're not even recognized as a father by your own daughter. I don't care what situation you're in. I'm planning to divorce you. You'll have to manage on your own from here. Hey, Sophia, wait. Who's going to take care of me then? Sebastian called out to me in a panicked voice. What are you going to do if we divorce? You're the one who'll be in trouble. There's no company that would hire a housewife who can't do anything like you. Don't you think it's sad for a child to be in a single mother household without a father? Ha! What's so funny? I scoffed at Sebastian's desperate argument. Continuing to be your wife is what's truly pitiful for the child. I've finally woken up with how you've treated me this time. Maybe I wouldn't struggle financially if I stayed married to you. But I can't live with someone who betrays his wife and kids to go on trips with his mistress. I'm sick of being treated like a slave or a housemaid. Okay, I get it. From now on, I'll treat you better. Isn't that enough? So drop this stupid idea of divorce. Being a slave is just your paranoia. I know you're worked up because you just had a baby, but try to calm down a bit. I am calm. Are you still sulking? Okay, if it makes you feel better, I'm sorry. Is that good enough? What are you apologizing for? For having an affair. Is that all? What about the verbal abuse towards me? I apologize for that too. I'll change and be kinder. I'll break it off with Arya, my mistress, too. Sebastian appealed to me earnestly. But recalling how he'd treated me, I couldn't find it in myself to forgive him. Your apologies must be just superficial. Over time, you'll probably return to your old ways. That can't be true. I did apologize properly. See, you start yelling as soon as you're contradicted. How can someone like that change easily? Damn it, then what do you want me to do? It's inconvenient for me if you don't come. I have a broken arm and leg, can't move them at all. Don't you care about your husband? You heartless woman. Heartless? That's rich coming from you. Who's the heartless one here? It's always all about you. Not even a word of appreciation for me giving birth? That's exaggerating. Childbirth is easy since it's your second time, right? Easy? Enduring labor pain while taking care of Harper, and you call that easy? Childbirth is something everyone does. It's nothing special. Once it's done, there's no pain, right? So my condition is more serious. You really don't understand anything. I'm still in pain from the postpartum wounds and can barely walk. But the kids don't wait. I'm raising them all by myself, day and night. You wouldn't understand since you didn't help at all when Harper was born. What is that, a dig? I've been providing generously to cover our living expenses. So that means you can leave your family and go on trips with your mistress? You're serious about that? Shut up. What are you trying to say? You're such a hassle. There it is, your true colors showing again. You really are beyond redemption. I can't stand being under your control any longer. I've been enduring for Harper's sake since we got married, but I can't do it anymore. You've always made excuses and barely took part in parenting. It's no wonder Harper doesn't feel close to you. To say you don't even know whose child it is. Both kids are undoubtedly yours. Don't lump me in with someone who would casually betray his wife and have an affair. I thought it was better for the kids to have a father, but I was a fool. I've finally woken up to that. Hey, just calm down. I'm not going to tolerate your selfishness any longer. The divorce is already a done deal. You might as well enjoy your rehabilitation with your young mistress. Hey, wait. I'm apologizing here. What's with that attitude? We're married, shouldn't you at least listen to me? How can you say that? Do you not remember what you said when I was enduring labor pains and called you for help? No matter how much I begged, you wouldn't listen. Just get yourself to the hospital, that's what you said, right? So, you should manage on your own too. Sebastian was left speechless by my words. You're no longer family to me. I never want to see your face again. Hey, wait. There's still more to discuss. I ignored Sebastian and hung up the phone. Mom, who was that on the phone? I don't know, someone unknown. Shall we have some snacks now? Yay! Snack time. Harper is hungry. Excuse me. Is Mrs. Tasker home? Mom, someone's here. Who could it be? The doorbell rang, signaling a visitor. When I checked the monitor, there was a man standing there. Hello. How have you been feeling since then? You are. Thank you so much for that time. I showed my appreciation to the man. It was Mr. McLaughlin, who had accompanied me to the hospital when I was struggling with labor pains. Did you come all this way to see me? I heard over the phone that you had given birth safely, but I was still worried. I apologize if I'm intruding. By the way, how is your husband today? Well, he's currently in the hospital after an accident. Oh, that must be tough. No, he never did much around the house or with the kids anyway, so it's actually easier without him. And actually, I'm planning to divorce him. I'm sorry to hear that, but may I ask why? He's been having an affair with a younger woman from his office. Even when I was in pain from labor, he went on a trip with his mistress, and that was the last straw. Harper hasn't been very close to him either, so I thought this was a good opportunity. I see. I'm sorry you had to go through such hard times. No, it's okay. Mr. McLaughlin, you were a lifesaver when I felt vulnerable without my husband. I couldn't just leave someone in that condition. If it weren't for Mr. McLaughlin, I would have been so lost. I'm glad I could be of help. Oh, and please take this. Mr. McLaughlin handed over a paper bag. It's from a bakery near my place. Their sweets are quite popular. It must be hard with a newborn. Please enjoy these with your daughter. Wow! Cookies! Thank you, Mr. Mom, they look really tasty. I feel bad for causing you trouble and now you bring sweets. I'm sorry. Not at all. I've been concerned about how you were doing. Mr. McLaughlin scratched his head with an embarrassed smile. Meeting you like this must be some kind of fate. If you ever need help in the future, please don't hesitate to ask. With that, Mr. McLaughlin, seemingly concerned about my postpartum burden, handed me some sweets and quickly left. I thought him incredibly kind, to the point of being a good Samaritan. But I couldn't impose on him any further, that's what I thought, yet soon I would need Mr. McLaughlin's help again. I later heard through the grapevine that Sebastian and his mistress, Aria, took quite some time to fully recover. Aria's injuries were worse than Sebastian's, leaving permanent scars on her face. It's because of your lousy driving that we crashed. They told me these scars on my face won't heal. What are you going to do about this? Look at my face, what a disgrace. I've got broken arms and legs too. We're both injured. I can't even go to the bathroom by myself. It's your fault for causing the accident. It's all your own doing. You caused these injuries, now take responsibility. With that, Arya furiously confronted Sebastian. It seems the two of them didn't stop arguing while they were hospitalized. After they were discharged, they apparently broke up after a fierce argument. Hey, Sebastian. The manager's calling for you. The manager? What for, all of a sudden? Who knows? You've been off because of your accident injuries, maybe it's about that? Sebastian headed to the manager's office, puzzled. Sebastian, how are you feeling? I heard it was quite a serious accident. Yes, I've fully recovered now. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience caused. That's fine. Fortunately, we have many capable people here. Everyone covered your work. Is that so? I'll make up for the time I missed from now on. I have something to ask you. Yes, what is it? Is Sophia your wife? Yes, Sophia is indeed my wife, but what about it? It was the day you had your accident. By chance, I was passing by and saw a woman in distress by the roadside. When I approached her, she was in labor pain. She was with a little girl and about to go to the maternity hospital, but her husband was out and not responding to calls. I later found out she was your wife. Tell me, Sebastian, what were you doing at that time? I was, out with a friend that day. Was that outing more important than attending to your pregnant wife? Well, yes. There was an unavoidable errand. An unavoidable errand, huh? It's interesting because our receptionist, Arya, also took leave for injuries at exactly the same time. Both of you, coincidentally. Do you have any idea why that might be? No, I'm not sure what you mean. Not sure. That's strange. While you were away, we conducted an internal inquiry and heard some unsavory rumors about you. Despite having a family, you seem to be involved with Arya, the receptionist. That's a private matter. I cannot answer that. If you choose not to answer, that's fine. However, our company does not tolerate employees who engage in affairs so casually. What do you mean by that? Especially in sales, you represent the face of the company. The rumors about you and Arya are already circulating inside. If this leaks to the outside, what then? Your actions could tarnish the company's reputation. From now on, you'll be excluded from important projects. That's unfair. My work and personal life are separate. Upsetting, isn't it? But imagine how much more your wife must have felt. To think her husband was off with another woman while she was about to give birth, leaving his pregnant wife to fend for herself. What were you thinking? I'm just an outsider, but I cannot overlook such disgraceful behavior. You will receive the appropriate consequences. This is tyranny. Such injustice cannot be allowed. The reason I'm imposing this penalty is not just this alone. I conducted detailed inquiries with our staff, and it seems you have quite a few enemies. You're good at currying favor with the higher-ups, but your reviews from subordinates and colleagues are the worst. It appears you've been doing whatever you want, including taking credit for others' work. You thought you were playing it smart, but considering this incident, your personnel evaluation isn't just zero, it's negative. You'll eventually be moved out of the sales department. That's... Following his recovery from the injury, Sebastian was reassigned from the sales department to a less influential position. Given that he worked for a major corporation, the harsh punishment was likely warranted. A few days passed, and my divorce negotiations with Sebastian began. Sebastian, having fallen off the career track and having broken up with his mistress, was initially against the divorce. I only have you. Please reconsider the divorce. Always so convenient for you. I'll really change this time. I'll take care of the kids and the housework properly. Do you think that can restore the trust you've lost? But you'd be in trouble too if you divorced me. Do you want to make our 2 children grow up without a father? They'll surely resent it later. Are you okay with that? What do you think about it, Harper? I asked Harper, who was playing nearby, if she would be sad without a father. No, I'm okay. Because Dad is never home anyway. I just need Mom. I don't like a dad who bullies Mom. Harper said this, showing her rejection of her father, Sebastian. Don't joke with me. What kind of way is that to talk to a father? What a cheeky brat. Sophia, this is your fault for how you raised her. Who do you think has been supporting you all this time? Sebastian was furious at Harper's attitude, his face turning red with anger. Do you think you could do whatever you wanted because you had support? If family is such a nuisance to you, then please, by all means, enjoy being single as much as you want from now on. No, wait, that came out wrong. No. That's what you really think. How long do you plan to use us conveniently? Don't take us for fools. Just calm down. I really do love my family. I don't want to separate. Don't leave me alone. Sebastian pleaded, clinging to me. That's pathetic. Maybe it's time you gave up. While we were arguing, Mr. McLaughlin, who had been waiting in another room, appeared. Actually, without telling Sebastian, I had asked Mr. McLaughlin to come over. I was worried that confronting Sebastian alone might lead to him getting violent. I had asked him to intervene if things got out of hand. Manager? Why are you here? Sophia asked me to come. If you were to lose control, she wanted me to intervene. What? Sophia, you know the manager? I didn't know that. I was the one who accompanied your wife to the hospital when she was in labor. What? Ah, are you saying that Sophia and the manager conspired against me? You, having an affair with the manager, what kind of woman are you? An adulteress. Sebastian, ignoring his own actions, glared at me and threw accusatory words. Why would you think that? Mr. McLaughlin helping me was a complete coincidence. The reason you're off the career track is entirely your own fault. Don't shift the blame. Then, manager, as an outsider, please stay out of this. This is a matter between husband and wife. Hey, Sophia. Cheer up already. I get it. You're jealous of Arya, aren't you? You're better than that hysterical woman. From now on, let's get along as a couple, no, as a family, okay? Saying this, Sebastian presumptuously grabbed my shoulder. Don't touch me! You're disgusting! I instinctively brushed Sebastian's hand away. Disgusting. What do you mean by that? Sebastian, apparently angered by my words, raised his fist in a fit of rage. Ah! Stop! What are you thinking? As I instinctively shielded my head with my hands, Mr. McLaughlin stepped between us and grabbed Sebastian's hand. Think about what you've done to yourself. You've brought this upon yourself. It's too late now. At those words, Sebastian finally seemed to realize that he had no chance of winning and slumped in defeat. With Mr. McLaughlin's help, I was able to finalize the divorce from my husband safely. The accident caused by my husband was thoroughly investigated by the police, and the fact that he was with his mistress at the time was officially documented. This became indisputable evidence of the affair, which worked in my favor during the divorce. I was able to receive alimony from both my husband and his mistress, and despite being a single mother, I managed to make ends meet. Mr. McLaughlin has kept in touch, showing concern for me on several occasions. Eventually, my daughter grew fond of him, even saying she wished he was her dad. Hearing that, I realized I also had feelings for him. It turned out he felt the same way, and one day, he proposed that we start a relationship with the intention of marriage. I'm sorry to bring this up when you're just divorced and your feelings might still be unsettled. But, are you sure about me? Even though I have 2 kids. It doesn't bother me. In fact, I want to be there to support you as you raise 2 children. I had known from the way he interacted with Harper that Mr. McLaughlin had always liked children. Moved by his words, I couldn't help but tear up. If you're okay with someone like me, then yes, please. And so, I accepted Mr. McLaughlин's proposal. Since then, our relationship has been going well with the children involved. My eldest daughter has come to regard him as her father, and even my younger daughter has grown quite attached to him. Hey, Daddy. Let's go play. All right, but be careful, let's hold hands. To any onlooker, Mr. McLaughlin and my daughters would appear as a real family. And soon, we plan to officially become one. We look forward to living happily as a family of 4. Excuse me. Suddenly, the living room door swung open, and it was Mike who walked in. Following him, about 4 others entered in a line, and Bob was grinning creepily from the back. Sorry, what's going on here? We're having a barbecue with friends today. Hurry up and get some meat and beer. Bob, now utterly condescending, said that to me. Birds of a feather flocked together, I guess. Bob's friends were also smiling crudely at me. It was the last straw. I'm heading out for a trip, so I can't. What? Bob's face twisted in anger as if I'd embarrassed him in front of his friends. Normally, upon seeing that expression, I would have panicked and done whatever Bob wanted. But now that I'm out of patience and affection for him, I couldn't care less about his mood. Just be careful with the fire, okay? Hey! I ignored all of them and left the house. But a few hours later, I got a call saying my husband had been taken to the police station while on our trip. What on earth did he do? My name is Nancy Smith. I'm a 48-year-old government worker. My parents passed away in a car accident when I was in college. I lived in the house they left me, and I managed to graduate from college using the insurance money and scholarships. Luckily, I landed a government job. Living alone was lonely at times, but my life was stable. The office I worked at was far from the house I lived in, so I rented out my family home and moved into a small apartment near my workplace. I rented out my house as it was, and since it was in a good location, it was rented out quickly. The tenant was a very kind person and, knowing my situation, said I could visit any time. Thanks to the rental income and my government salary, my life was more stable than most people my age. Around that time, I started enjoying visiting churches, museums, and old mansions. Time seemed to move slowly in these places, and they had a unique atmosphere that made me feel relaxed in some way and solemn on the other hand, which I loved. I met my husband Bob at a book club for adults, which I was invited to by a friend. He was quiet and kind, and I was quickly drawn to him. Bob was very intuitive and took the lead, which helped because I was shy in relationships. After dating for 2 years, he proposed to me on my 29th birthday, and we got married. The next year, our daughter Emma was born, and we were incredibly happy. However, around that time, Bob's true colors started to show. I worked as well, so we had an agreement to share household duties. Bob kept his word until I was pregnant, but once I started maternity leave, he often went out for drinks. And once I was on parental leave, he stopped doing any house chores altogether. Hey, aren't you in charge of the dishes? Please. What? You're just lounging around at home all day, why don't you do it? Bob quickly got ready and left after saying that. Ever since Emma was born, he would go out for drinks about 4 times a week, and he never helped take care of her. Juggling housework while holding Emma, due to her night feedings, was tough and sleep-deprived. But when I voiced this out, Bob didn't understand at all. Instead, he ridiculed me, saying I was inefficient. My love for Bob decreased as the days went by, and by the time Emma turned 5, I saw him merely as a roommate. Thankfully, I didn't have to work on weekends or holidays, and I never had to do overtime. That allowed me to spend quality time with Emma. Though Emma required a lot of attention, night crying and frequent breastfeeding as a baby, as she grew older, she became very independent. She was clingy during our moments alone, but she willingly helped with house chores and always thanked me for everything. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that watching Emma grow was my only joy. Bob, on the other hand, seemed indifferent to Emma. He'd only approach her when he was in a good mood. By that time, Bob's mask had completely fallen off. Not only did he neglect house chores and parenting, but he also went out drinking almost every day and came home filling the air with women's perfume smell. But I had lost so much affection for Bob that I hardly cared anymore. Still, I didn't choose divorce to ensure Emma had a stable environment. To be honest, with the rental income from my family home and my salary, I could easily support Emma's education up to college. But I didn't want to risk Emma facing difficulties if something happened to my income. Luckily, Bob was good at his job, and even though he worked at a smaller firm, he earned more than I did. I decided to see him as someone contributing to Emma's education fund and our living expenses. However, by the time Emma entered high school, Bob's spending habits worsened. I had let him spend freely except for Emma's tuition and living expenses. However, one day, I got a call from the school saying they hadn't received her tuition payment. In a panic, I transferred the money from my account. This incident made me realize that staying married had no benefits anymore. With that thought, I approached Bob, who was seriously looking at himself in the mirror for his going out for drinks. "Hey," the school called. "They said Emma's tuition hasn't been paid." "Oh? So? It's not so, is it? You promised to cover that." "But she's been acting so weird lately. She's always glaring at me." "That's just she's at her rebellious age." I felt a headache coming on. Bob must have gone through that rebellious phase himself. Yet, he showed no interest in our daughter Emma's growth. Not paying for her tuition just because she's acting out is not only irresponsible as a father but as a person as well. At that moment, I decided to divorce Bob once Emma would start college. And until then, I decided to play the role of a docile wife. Lost in my thoughts, I noticed Bob smirking at me. "What? I barely come home, so do I even need to contribute to living expenses? Instead, I'll pay for her tuition and stop giving money for other expenses." "Fine." I felt my determination waver at his words, but agreed nonetheless. It can't possibly be accepted not to contribute to living expenses from the start. But needing him to cover Emma's tuition was more important, so I begrudgingly accepted. The money Bob once provided for living expenses became his pocket money, and his lifestyle became increasingly extravagant. One day, as I was walking near the station after work, I saw Bob with a familiar-looking man, their arms around each other. Bob didn't notice me, but the man did and approached me. "Hey, aren't you Bob's wife? What are you up to here?" "Well," I felt like I'd met him at our wedding, but I couldn't remember his name since Bob never introduced us. And even from a distance, I could smell the strong alcohol on him. How long had he been drinking? I tried to keep a smile on my face, suppressing my discomfort. "Oh, I'm Mike. Bob and I were in the same club in college. By the way, you're stunning. How about a night with me?" "Just kidding." Hey, if you want this old lady, she's all yours." I was more shocked by Bob's words than Mike's crude remarks. No matter how drunk, no man should say that about his wife in her presence. "Really? Maybe I should book a hotel room then." "No, I'll pass, thanks. I'm in a hurry, so." Chills ran down my spine, and I quickly left the scene. I could hear Mike and Bob talking behind me, but I chose to ignore them. When Bob came home late that night, by the next morning he didn't even remember seeing me. When I asked him about Mike, Bob boasted something about him starting a lucrative business recently and that he had gone to hear about it. "Don't come asking for money when I get rich, all right?" I just replied to his fluffy words. Yeah. As long as he covered Emma's tuition, I had no more expectations from Bob. However, after Emma had started college, a major incident took place. It happened on the day I planned a solo trip to use up some of my accrued leave. After packing everything by the entrance, I took a little break. Bob, being chirpy, had left early in the morning, so I just left him a message. He read it, so I considered my duty done and sipped my tea. I then heard a noise from the entrance and thought Bob had unusually come back early. However, when I saw who came in through the open door, I almost spit out my tea in surprise. "Hey there! Suddenly, the living room door opened, and it was Mike. 4 or so more guys followed him in. Excuse me, what's going on? We're having a barbecue with friends today. Go buy some meat and beer quickly. Both Bob, with his lewd smile, and his friends were grinning at me. I felt it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. I have a trip planned right now, so I can't. What? Bob's face turned red and furious at the thought of having been embarrassed by me in front of his friends. Normally, seeing that expression would have made me panic and do as he said, but now, with my patience worn thin, I had absolutely no interest in Bob's mood. Just be careful with the fire, okay? Hey! Ignoring all of them, I left the house. However, a few hours later at my vacation destination, I got a call that my husband had been taken to the police station. What on earth did he do? The call from the police was to verify his identity, and they told me there was no need for me to come to there immediately. Apparently, the questioning was likely to take a while. They asked if I could prepare some clothes and such for Bob to stay overnight in detention. It seems he had given them my name and contact information. We can provide some basics and bill you later if that works. Oh, that's fine. Please bill him directly. Understood. If there's anything else, we'll contact you. Yes, thank you. It seems the reason Bob was taken to the police station was that he drunkenly tried to forcibly bring a woman walking by into his home. They caught him in the act, so there was no room for dispute. They said he'd likely be charged. On top of that, Mike is under suspicion for other matters, and there's a chance Bob might be involved as well. Hearing this, I slumped down in place, utterly drained. I was thankful to have reached my destination. Tears streamed down my face. Then, a coffee was placed on the table in front of me. Mom, are you okay? What happened? Actually, my travel destination was the area where Emma attended college, and I was planning to stay at Emma's place during the trip. The call from the police came just as I had arrived at Emma's place and was about to relax. Your dad was arrested by the police. The reason is kind of... It's okay. Tell me when you're calm. Mom, maybe you should seriously consider divorcing him. You endured for my sake, right? I ranked first in my class this year. My professor told me I'd get a scholarship without any obligation to pay it back. So, I'm okay. Emma. Maybe you're right. Emma's words cemented my resolve. Part of me felt like a failure as a parent, letting my daughter speak this way. At the same time, I was overjoyed that Emma had grown up so wonderfully. A few days later, I received a call from the police that only Bob had been released. It seems Bob didn't know that Mike's business was involved in criminal activities, and he actually claimed to be a victim. Indeed, it was proven that Bob was innocent, and he was cleared of charges. A part of me was disappointed. The day after the call from the police, Bob called me. Honestly, I didn't want to answer the phone, but thinking about the future, I decided to pick it up. Hello? You picked up. Where are you? At Emma's place. There was a pause on Bob's end as he seemed to think. But he quickly returned to his usual demanding tone. I don't know where she lives. Just come home already. There's so much housework to do. Sorry, but I'm not coming back. What? Bob was taken aback by my firm rejection and seemed frozen in shock. Speaking into the silent phone, I slowly repeated. I'm not coming back. I want a divorce. What the hell are you talking about? Do you even understand? Bob managed to blurt out. I didn't respond to Bob. At the same time, I heard the sound of a phone dropping on the other end. He must have been truly shocked. Taking the opportunity, I added. I'll have my lawyer contact you regarding the details. Expect a call from them soon. Hey! Nancy! Bob called my name, but I hung up without hesitation. Immediately after, I called the lawyer I had just hired the day before. The lawyer promptly reached out to Bob. Bob called me multiple times in response, but I ignored every single call. Next, I called my workplace. I had already been considering early retirement, and now seemed like the perfect time. I decided to move closer to Emma. Fortunately, I had an inheritance from my parents and consistent income from renting out our family home. Plus, with the severance pay, I would be financially stable on my own. It took about 2 months for me to wrap things up at work, so I rented a furnished apartment nearby for the interim. I worked from there, ensuring a smooth handover of my tasks. During that period, Bob kept calling, but my lawyer handled all communications. Bob was livid about the divorce and kept claiming, "I didn't do anything," and "You're just misunderstanding." Reluctantly, I agreed to meet up and talk things out. Even setting a date and time was quite a challenge, but 3 weeks after proposing a meeting, we finally settled on a date. I braced myself for what would be the most crucial confrontation. On the day of our meeting, the man who showed up looked like a disgruntled middle-aged guy. "I'm not agreeing to any divorce. I was just deceived. I didn't do anything wrong. Let's discuss this after we're seated." In response to Bob's stubborn attitude, I calmly walked into the restaurant first. It was a high-end place, with private rooms like individual cottages. This was the same establishment where Bob and I had dined to celebrate our engagement. "Do you remember this place?" "What?" Bob's lackluster response extinguished the last piece of my affection. After all, we had once promised each other a lifetime together. Hoping that recalling this place would make our discussion a bit more peaceful turned out to be wishful thinking on my part. "Let's start the conversation, shall we?" At my words, the lawyer seated beside me began laying out several documents. They were densely packed with records of Bob's actions, evidence of his infidelity, and details about the shady business Mike was involved in. Bob glanced at them with clear annoyance and let out a sigh. "What's this? If you've got a beef with me, say it to my face. You're so passive-aggressive." "This isn't about complaints. It's about laying out the facts for our upcoming discussion." Hearing this seemed to darken Bob's mood even more. Still, I had no intention of backing down. However, when another document was introduced, his face visibly changed. "Hey, this. Oh, didn't you know?" Attached to the paper was a photograph of a woman in a wedding dress, smiling beside a man who was presumably her husband. Seeing the two of them, Bob's face turned pale. "That's the woman you've been seeing, right? Your boss's wife?" I. It seemed like Bob genuinely didn't know. He looked flustered, a far cry from his previous arrogance. According to my investigations, Bob and this woman had been involved for around 3 years. Bob had considered divorcing me to marry her, but lately, she had been distant. Turns out, she had married Bob's boss even before meeting Bob. Apparently, it was a shotgun wedding, and just recently, they celebrated their 10th anniversary by taking wedding photos. And of course, evidence was mailed to Bob's workplace and scheduled to be handed to his boss today. She probably has received the notice by now. Speak of the devil. No way! Just at the right moment, Bob's phone on the table rang, displaying his boss's name on the screen. Bob didn't answer, so I took the liberty to tap on answer. Switching it to speaker mode, a deafening yell blared from the phone, so loud you'd think the windows would break. You've been deceiving me? Cheating on my wife even during work hours? That's a betrayal to the company too. Don't think you'll be safe at work starting tomorrow. I'm so sorry. Bob, in a tizzy, looked absolutely pitiful. There was no trace of the charm he once had when I loved him. I shook my head and tapped on the documents. So, can I submit the divorce papers for now? No, I won't. Perhaps because his plans to remarry his affair partner were now ruined, Bob became even more stubborn about not wanting a divorce. Feeling cornered, I called out to someone beyond the door. It seems so. This is troublesome. What should we do? Who's there? Trembling with fear, Bob looked over to me for answers. I simply directed him to the door with my gaze. Hesitant at first, Bob's face turned an even paler shade when he saw the person who walked in.
Dad! Mom! Why are you here?
It was my parents-in-law. Bob didn't get along too well with my in-laws, and after our marriage, he forbade me from interacting with them. For him, they were the last people he expected to see. My mother-in-law gave me a slight nod before storming up to Bob and raising her hand. With a loud slap, Bob's face turned red. My mother-in-law, even more flushed than him, began shouting.
How could you? Cheating on Nancy, a wonderful wife! What have you done?
Huh? Nancy and you haven't met since we got married. How do you know she's wonderful? Before I could respond, my father-in-law intervened.
Nancy has been sending us letters once a month, updating us on Emma's growth. Recently, she and Emma have even come to visit. She's too good for a son who hasn't even reached out once since getting married.
What the heck?
Hey! Didn't I tell you not to contact my family? What gives you the right to reach out without my permission?
Bob shouted, diverting his gaze from my father-in-law to glare at me. Actually, my in-laws own a farm and live together with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. For some reason, Bob, who never got along with my brother-in-law's wife and always criticized her, was kicked out of the family home right after graduating from college. Bob probably kept me away from my in-laws because he was worried his bad behavior would come to light. When I found out from my in-laws, brother-in-law, and his wife that this was the case, I was stunned by my poor judgment in choosing a husband. When I sent a greeting card, they were kind enough to call me. That's how we secretly kept in touch.
You deceived me? Who I associate with is none of your business. I don't want to hear it from a man who cheated repeatedly and got involved in shady business dealings.
I retorted, and Bob froze, looking frustrated. However, he suddenly changed his mind.
Ha! You seem to have thought this all through, but I'm divorcing you. I won't be giving you a dime or a house. Why even bother saying that? Everything's going to Nancy.
My mother-in-law said, pushing him slightly. He was taken aback. I coldly watched Bob for a moment, put the documents in my bag, and left the restaurant with my lawyer. Later, I went to the city court to submit the divorce papers. Although it was a swift process, I felt extremely relieved. Bob was exposed for having an affair with his boss's wife and engaging in it even during working hours. He got fired from his small company. Since he gave me all the money, he was left penniless. In the end, my in-laws temporarily took him back to their family home and later sent him off to live with distant relatives. Turns out, my brother-in-law's daughter got married last year, and she's about to return to her hometown for a baby shower. Because of past grievances, my sister-in-law hadn't forgiven him, and she even refused to let him into the house. During the summer, Bob spent one night in a small hut on their property. The next morning, a relative came and took him away. Although Bob's lover and her husband, who is also Bob's boss, didn't end up divorcing, she was forced to live with the boss's parents. It's said that she's constantly under the watchful eye of the mother-in-law, enduring her constant snide remarks and nagging. Once, Bob apparently sneaked out of his relative's house to see his lover. However, it seemed she was just using him for fun because as soon as she saw him, she said, "Give me some money so I can get away." This is what the mother-in-law had heard through the grapevine from the relatives. He was devastated and returned to his relative's house. Now, he works non-stop, and when he does get a day off, he's under the watchful eye of his relatives and can't go out freely. Even after the divorce, I've maintained a relationship with my in-laws, as they are Emma's grandparents. My brother-in-law and his wife are wonderful, and we often get together for meals, making me feel like I have a new family. Emma was initially upset a bit about being left out of the divorce proceedings, but she was actually thrilled with the outcome. Since she lives nearby, we hang out together twice a week. As for me, I've moved to an area with a lot of churches and cathedrals and have been immersing myself in my hobbies. I own 2 homes, one in my hometown and the other in the city center, which I rent out to others. The rental income alone covers my living expenses. So, I've been able to freely use my retirement funds and insurance payouts for Emma's college fees, my hobbies, and travel. Lately, I've been thinking that with such a relaxed lifestyle, I should have gotten divorced much earlier. I picked up the special notebook Emma gave me for my birthday and set out on my church visiting trip. I had a feeling deep down that things would turn out this way after breaking off the engagement. Right after we got engaged, Ryan became suddenly distant. He showered Jake with unusual kindness while ignoring my opinions, pushing for this wedding. I tried to stay positive and keep my spirits up, but I never expected him to announce the end of our engagement. Even though I saw it coming, facing it as a reality was a big shock. I really wanted to lash out at Ryan immediately, but I held back. It wasn't the right time. Understood. I replied with a cold, calm voice. I hung up the phone right after that. It was Ryan who had mentioned breaking off the engagement. I knew what had to be done. There were a heap of issues to address right in front of me, but I decided to make Ryan pay for neglecting me and Jake's feelings. My name is Sarah. I'm 42 and a deputy director at a certain company. I have a 6-year-old son named Jake. I had divorced my ex-husband, so I was a single mom. The reason for our divorce wasn't infidelity or anything like that. It was due to differences in personality and values. Even though I was busy with work, I always cherished my time with Jake. But it seemed my ex-husband didn't feel the same. Probably, he couldn't stand the fact that I earned more than he did. Our disagreements became constant, and considering the impact on Jake, I chose to divorce. I've never regretted that decision. A few years passed, and Ryan, my later fiancé, came into my company as a business partner. Ryan was a regular employee but mentioned that he'd be promoted to section chief within a few years. Ryan, more than 10 years my junior, was 28 at the time. At first, I didn't see him romantically, but as he actively pursued me, I began to take notice. He said he was attracted to my mature and responsible nature. Seeing him getting along with Jake during our days off felt wonderful, and after dating for 2 years, we got engaged when I was 42 and he was 30. After some time being engaged, Ryan said, "Let's actually tie the knot on the day of the wedding ceremony. I think it feels more special that way." I could understand where Ryan was coming from, but I wasn't too excited. Because I had already had a wedding ceremony with my ex-husband. Even though I invited friends to that wedding, the fact that we ended up getting divorced still weighed on me. I wanted to have the wedding ceremony as Ryan wished, but I felt hesitant. I honestly told him about my feelings, but Ryan brushed it off, saying, "No one cares about that." When he said that, I felt I had no choice but to agree. However, I stated I wouldn't invite any guests. I don't have many friends, and after already receiving wedding gifts once, I felt awkward asking for them again. So, I told him I'd only invite my parents. Ryan became unhappy with this. He said it would look unbalanced with his side having more guests. "It'll seem like I'm showing off. Please invite someone." Feeling pressured, I reluctantly reached out to some friends. Luckily, they happily agreed to attend, but they declined to give wedding gifts. The customary gift for a friend's wedding is $300. Given the current economic situation, it's not a small amount. When I told Ryan, he clicked his tongue in annoyance. He was likely concerned about the increased cost since we wouldn't be receiving gifts. I got a glimpse of Ryan's unpleasant side, which made me feel uneasy. However, I had a well-thought-out financial plan. Since my divorce from my ex-husband, I had saved money, including some from even before that time. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was sufficient to cover the wedding gifts for a few friends. When I told this to Ryan, he clicked his tongue in annoyance again. "It'd be better if we didn't invite them at all," he exclaimed. Just then, Jake came out of the bathroom. Instantly, Ryan's attitude shifted, and he began interacting with Jake as if he were the perfect father. Without being asked, he offered to help Jake with his homework. Jake didn't seem to mind, so I let it be. Recently, Ryan had been colder towards me, but he remained kind to Jake. That was the only comfort I had during our engagement. Still, I couldn't shake off this feeling of unease. Before we got engaged, Ryan was kind no matter the circumstances. But as soon as we became engaged, it was as if he changed into a completely different person. This filled my heart with a sense of unease. After several discussions, we decided to go ahead with the wedding. Ryan took charge of most of the preparations, so I didn't have much to do. Months passed, and we were just a month away from the wedding. Throughout this time, I continued to feel that something was off. Ryan was genuinely a great father when he was with Jake. However, when it was just the two of us, he showed a colder side, and our arguments increased day by day. We were still only engaged, but it felt like we were living as a couple just going through the motions. To be honest, I wasn't comfortable. Jake looked up to Ryan and thought we were already remarried since he didn't understand the details. So, I couldn't bring myself to make the decision to leave Ryan. With my ex-husband, it was easier since Jake had said,
"Dad doesn't pay attention to me, so I don't like him."
However, with Ryan, he actively spent time with Jake, taking him out almost every weekend. If I put up with it and kept a smile on my face, we would be the perfect family everyone envies. At some point, I realized I had placed these constraints on myself, always holding back. Luckily, due to a busy period at work, I tried not to think about Ryan. As time went on, we were almost at our wedding date. We hadn't officially registered our marriage yet, so there was still time to choose a different path. But I thought it was too soon to decide and prioritized Jake's well-being in my actions. One day, Jake expressed a desire to stay at his grandmother's house. It wasn't an unexpected request. It was summer, and he was on school vacation. It was a yearly tradition for Jake to stay at my family home in the countryside during this season. So, this year, he wanted to visit there again. Usually, I would have taken this time to enjoy some alone time. However, the circumstances were different now. Ryan, who had been cold towards me, would be at home too. I tried to persuade Jake to stay, but Ryan suddenly said, "I have a business trip anyway, and can't take him out, so it's fine." Relieved, I sent Jake off with a smile. At the same time, Ryan left for his supposed business trip, saying he'd be away for a few days. We hadn't had major fights recently, but we bickered frequently. I remembered having small disagreements with my ex-husband too, so maybe this was normal for couples. I had stopped being bothered by Ryan's attitude and our arguments, but now that I was free from them, I felt refreshed. I tried to ask Ryan about his business trip, but he told me not to interfere with his work, and I couldn't get any details. I became worried when I didn't hear from him, so I sent him an email, only to be scolded, saying it was bothersome. At that moment, it felt like a string inside me snapped. Until now, I had endured, thinking that if I made sacrifices, Jake would be happy. But I had reached my breaking point. And that breaking point came abruptly. As things progressed, the day of the wedding ceremony next month arrived. Considering the guests who'd agreed to attend, canceling wasn't really an option. This morning, Ryan said he had some business and would join me later, hurriedly leaving the house. Because of that, Jake and I headed to the venue by ourselves. This being Jake's first wedding ceremony, he seemed truly excited. But as time went on, there was no sign of Ryan. He wouldn't even answer his phone. Moreover, I noticed something strange going on. From the conversations of the staff, I learned that not a single guest invited by Ryan had arrived. There were attendance lists and seating charts, and since Ryan had been the main person handling things, there shouldn't have been any mistakes. The church ceremony was to start in about 30 minutes, but with Ryan nowhere to be seen, I called him. After 2 rings, Ryan answered with a lethargic voice. "What do you want? Stop calling me over and over." This wasn't the time for such remarks. I demanded to know where he was and why none of his guests had shown up. Sensing my panic, Ryan chuckled and said, "Of course they're not here. I didn't inform anyone about the wedding, not even my parents." I was left speechless. For a moment, I was silent, my hand trembling as I held the phone. Then, I caught the worried gaze of Jake and snapped back to reality. Struggling to keep my voice steady, I asked,
"So what happens to our engagement?"
Even though we hadn't officially registered our marriage, we had been living as a genuine family. I'd made many sacrifices hoping for Jake's happiness. But to Ryan, perhaps it didn't matter at all? While feeling utterly dejected, I awaited Ryan's answer. Finally, with zero understanding of my feelings, Ryan coldly said, "I think we should break off the engagement." Although I had a hunch things might come to this, facing this reality was devastating. I wanted to lash out at Ryan right then, but I held back. Now wasn't the time. I replied in an eerily calm voice,
"Understood,"
and immediately hung up. Ryan had proposed the breakup. My course of action was now clear. While numerous issues lay before me, I resolved to handle them one by one and teach Ryan a lesson for disregarding my and Jake's feelings. The next day, Ryan called repeatedly. On the voicemail, there were numerous frantic messages from him. But I felt no obligation to answer, so I blocked his calls and sent a short message saying there was nothing left to discuss. When he persisted with replies to the email, I simply ignored them and turned off notifications. Then, realizing I had returned to my parents' house, he came over. It happened to be when I was taking a bath, so my mother dealt with Ryan. I could hear them arguing at the entrance. My parents felt relieved when I decided to respond, but they warned that if the argument intensified, they'd call the police. Hearing that, Ryan clicked his tongue in annoyance and ranted,
"Hey! What's this document demanding payment for the wedding expenses? I found it at home. Are you mocking me?"
Ryan had finally shown his ugly side. Up to this point, he had only shown coldness, but now I realized this crude language was his true nature. But I was the one who felt mocked. I responded with a composed attitude.
"Of course. After all, you were the one who insisted on this wedding even when I was reluctant. Moreover, you pretended to invite guests and in reality, didn't send any invitations. By all accounts, you should be the one paying."
Upon saying that, Ryan's face turned beet red as he retorted. He argued he hadn't eaten or drunk anything at the wedding, and since he didn't actually invite any guests, he didn't want to pay. Annoyed, I decided to silence Ryan by confronting him with a certain truth.
"You're still making those excuses after all this? It's just like you to prioritize the woman you're having an affair with and bail on our wedding day with a fake emergency. No, given you didn't invite any guests, this must have been part of your plan all along."
As I spoke with a mocking smile, Ryan stared wide-eyed at me. Then muttered something in a low voice. I wasn't just gonna sit back and tolerate everything. Once I decide to do something, I gotta see it through. I'd grown suspicious when Ryan went on a dubious business trip. He refused to tell me where he was and blocked my texts. Given his distant behavior up to that point, I couldn't help but suspect he was cheating. I found a nearby detective agency, met with them a few times, and got them on the case. Sure enough, they discovered Ryan was having an affair. The other woman's name was Kate, a 29-year-old waitress at a local diner. Shockingly, I learned that Ryan and Sarah had been seeing each other since a few weeks before our engagement. The detective deduced this timeline from conversations they had on their supposed anniversary. This meant that while dating me, Ryan had been carrying on with Kate as well. When I found out, I was less angry and more devastated. Ryan and Sarah's affair was, of course, still ongoing. Just yesterday, Ryan, being suspicious as usual, said he had business to attend to. I had a detective tail him, which is how I found out the real reason he bailed on our plans. Ryan, unaware I'd uncovered his cheating, turned pale and fled when confronted with the evidence. After that business trip, I consulted a lawyer with the investigative report that the detective had compiled about Ryan's infidelity. Even though we weren't legally married, I absolutely refused to let this slide without a fight. So, I wondered if there was any way to get compensation from Ryan and Kate. However, contrary to my expectations, the lawyer said that it seems I can't claim compensation from Ryan for his infidelity. We had planned to split the wedding costs, so I really didn't want to pay my share. I was wondering if there was any way to make Ryan bear the entire cost. In the midst of these secret consultations with the lawyer noticed something. Reading the investigative report, it became clear that Ryan was seriously in love with Kate, with multiple mentions of him whispering about marrying her someday. Moreover, the lawyer pointed out that Ryan seemed to view me as nothing more than a cash cow, with plans to ditch me in the future. It felt impossible to have a wedding in such circumstances. I was too heartbroken over the lengthy period of Ryan's affair to go through the entire report, but when the lawyer mentioned these points, I had to agree. The lawyer, from his experience, suggested that what Ryan and Kate were doing might amount to marital fraud and that there might be ulterior motives for Ryan pushing the wedding. I then asked if, in the worst-case scenario, Ryan was trying to ruin the wedding on purpose to get back at me, could I claim all the expenses for the ceremony? The lawyer responded that, given all the evidence at hand, claiming would indeed be possible. So, I decided to act like I was fooled by Ryan. At that time, I had recorded everything, from his casual remarks at the venue, to comments made at his parents' house. The detective's report clearly stated that Ryan's decision not to invite any guests was intentional harassment, and Kate was an accomplice. Their rather childish motive seemed to be to revel in seeing me flustered. Not knowing they were being tailed by a detective, they unwittingly provided all the evidence I needed to claim full compensation for the emotional distress and wedding expenses. I expressed my gratitude for their careless chatter. On the wedding day, I explained the situation to the guests and converted the event into a simple dinner party. After refunding all the gifts, I headed straight to the lawyer's office. The lawyer was flabbergasted, saying he hadn't seen someone so naive in a long time. He promptly prepared the necessary documents for claiming compensation and emotional distress, allowing me to leave a prepared divorce notice and those papers at our home. That's how I got to where I am now. Even if Ryan anticipated a divorce, he probably never expected to face compensation claims so quickly. After he ran away, I received numerous apology emails, which I promptly deleted without reading. Such shallow apologies were nowhere near acceptable. Moreover, I knew that a legal notice had been sent to Kate, detailing everything. Given that she lived with her parents, it was only a matter of time before everything came to light. Things were progressing so smoothly that I had to work hard to contain my excitement. A few days passed, and Ryan and Kate came to see me. Ryan looked pale and gaunt, as if he had been through a lot these past days. However, Kate seemed indifferent, behaving as if this was someone else's problem. I didn't know you two were engaged. And as for me faking sickness, I was really feeling bad the other day, and I just called Ryan for help. I hadn't yet told either of them about the solid evidence I had gathered. I had only told them that I had hired a detective, so Kate probably thought she could feign ignorance. To make matters worse, she started to lash out at me. You knew I was living with my parents when you sent that certified mail, right? Thanks to you, my mom found out everything, and I got kicked out. Now I should be the one asking for compensation. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. Kate looked stunned, unable to comprehend why I found it funny. It seemed like Kate planned to put all the blame on Ryan and get away without any responsibility. But I wasn't gonna let that happen. We are both adults in our late 20s, and she should be accountable for her actions. I shot Kate a stern look, and she flinched, her eyes darting left and right. Sorry to break it to you, but I have evidence proving that you knew Ryan was involved with someone else when you started seeing him. Ryan, you were just using me to end up with your side chick, weren't you? You approached me for my money from the start, and when it came time to dump me, you tried to humiliate me during our wedding. Am I right? According to the detective's findings, the two knew each other before meeting me. Apparently, they weren't dating at that time. However, Ryan was burdened with student loans from college, unable to lead a lavish life. Kate, even though she had a massive debt from her parents and banks, was still living on a part-time job, unable to repay anything. Even though they were aware of their romantic feelings for each other, they believed they couldn't find happiness by marrying in their current situation. Thus, they hatched a despicable plan, and I unfortunately became their target. While I was a single mother, I had saved enough money to raise Jake on my own. Despite being a single mom, I held a significant position in my company. Ryan probably thought I was making a good amount of money and approached me to execute his marriage fraud plan. The reason he didn't officially marry me was that he didn't want any blemish on his public record. He probably thought living together would be treated as if we were married and hoped to get some of my savings when we broke up. Unfortunately for him, the savings I had been accumulating were my separate property and wouldn't be subject to division. When I told him this, Ryan was devastated.
Are you kidding? If I was gonna get sued, I at least thought I could get a good chunk through property division.
As expected, his reaction just made me shake my head and chuckle. I then turned to Kate, ready to expose her ambitions.
Didn't you have an illness when you were younger that prevents you from having children for the rest of your life? You wanted a family with Ryan and saw an opportunity with me since I had Jake, right? You also knew I had money. But targeting me was your mistake. I'm not that gullible.
When I confronted them, they both recoiled in fear. I was most hurt by the fact that Ryan was pretending to be kind to Jake to eventually take him away from me. There was nothing left to discuss with them directly. I told them that from now on, all dealings would be through my attorney. But Ryan made one last desperate plea.
I think I was a good father figure for Jake. You saw how close we were. Maybe we should hear what Jake thinks.
The mere mention of Jake's name by Ryan disgusted me. And to add insult to injury, Kate shouted.
Exactly. Jake would definitely prefer a young mom like me over an old lady like you.
I was left speechless by their audacity. As I stood there in shock, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. It was Jake, who had been doing his homework upstairs. Upon seeing Ryan and Kate, Jake immediately said,
Someone who hurts my mom isn't my dad.
Ryan was visibly shaken by Jake's words. Despite being only 6 years old, Jake had sensed Ryan's exaggerated kindness towards him and the occasional coldness Ryan showed me. When I had mentioned going to my parents' house, Jake had happily asked if he could spend time with his grandpa. I realized how strong Jake truly was, especially after the incident at the wedding ceremony. Hearing this, Jake began to cry. He then turned to Kate, who was standing next to Ryan, and probably glaring at her, said,
My mom's the only mom for me. And who are you, old lady?
Kate, being referred to as an old lady, seemed highly offended and replied,
You're just being rude.
With her voice trembling. Concerned for Jake, I stepped in between them, shielding him from her. I took a deep breath, ready to deliver the final blow to Kate.
It's really pathetic for an adult to retort to a 6-year-old. You're getting so red, did I hit a nerve? And you should be careful with your constant lies. The diner you work at, isn't it operated by the company my father runs? You didn't recognize the family name?
Upon hearing that, Kate's face turned ghostly white. After pausing for a moment, seemingly deep in thought, she looked at the family name on the sign in front of my childhood home, which made her even paler. She muttered things like,
This can't be true.
And,
No way.
But when she saw my father's face, her face went from pale blue to stark white. Though she kept apologizing, my father's stern expression didn't waver. Startled by my father's outburst, both of them fled without looking back. Because of their blinded desires, they involved others and as a result, would face severe consequences. I sued Ryan for emotional damages and for the costs of the wedding venue. On top of that, they were taken into custody by the police for the marriage scam. I heard they were given a suspended sentence. Ryan's parents, after hearing about the situation, apologized to me and covered all the expenses Ryan owed me. Now, Ryan is back at his family home, working tirelessly from dawn to dusk to help with the family business. However, he's earning almost nothing to repay the debts and is virtually confined to the property. News of this incident spread among Ryan's friends, ruining his social relationships. Having a criminal record will surely darken his future prospects. It came to light that Kate habitually feigned sickness to skip work, leading to cold stares from her colleagues. She was close to being promoted but ended up quitting. She's now homeless, living on the streets, and has become unemployed. The two of them broke up, and it seems their dreams of a happy future were crushed, leading them to live lonely lives. I've decided not to remarry, primarily for Jake's sake. While it's beneficial for a child to have a father, I wasn't longing for that, and though I may face criticism for being a single mother, the definition of happiness is determined by the individual, not by outsiders. I plan to support Jake until he becomes independent, ensuring he doesn't face any hardships.